Mario has gone through many changes in his 30+ years of gaming history. Starting his career as Jumpman in Donkey Kong, Mario has become a tennis star, pro golfer, referee, kart racer, outlaw, teacher, and even a cat. But the biggest change Mario went through was his jump from the two-dimensional world into 3 dimensions. And this all started with Super Mario 64. As one of Nintendo's first fully 3D video games, developers of Super Mario 64 had to design what only had been done by a handful of people. Trial and error was used quite often throughout the game's development, and because of this, there are many scrapped ideas, functionalities, and objects hidden in this charming game. So on this episode of Beta64, I'm going to discuss the beta of Super Mario 64. The concept of Super Mario 64 began with the development of Star Fox for the SNES, which used the Super Effects chip to simulate a 3D effect. Many believe that Super Mario 64 actually started development as an SNES game, called Super Mario FX. But recently, Dylan Cuthbert, who helped develop the Super FX chip and Star Fox, stated that there was no Super Mario FX ever developed for the Super Nintendo. In fact, it turns out that the internal name of Super FX chip is codenamed Super Mario FX. Taking all this information into account, I personally believe that Super Mario 64 did not begin with the SNES, or was even planned for it. This rumor most likely began from a Nintendo Power interview with Miyamoto, in which he stated that he had the idea of a 3D Mario game while developing Star Fox. People then assumed that he started developing this so-called Super Mario FX during the same time as well. During Super Mario 64's early development, many ideas were considered, some that were kept in the final game, and others that weren't. One idea that was scrapped was the gold flagpole from earlier Mario games. While the developers discussed what they most enjoyed about 3D video games, they came to the conclusion that scouring the world for hidden items was the most enjoyable part. Thus, in order to remove the linear aspect, the gold pole was scrapped. Years later, this flagpole idea was incorporated into Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS and Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U. Super Mario 64 was first revealed at Space World 1995, along with the reveal of Zelda 64. At this time, Super Mario 64 was near completion, so the many changes to the game were mostly minor ones. The press start and game over text on the title screen went through one of these changes. They originally used a less colorful, more standard font, instead of the final custom font. The stages in the beta used to have more colorful, cartoony textures to them, which can be seen the most from early footage of Whomps Fortress. Speaking of Whomps Fortress, early thwomps and bomps in Whomps Fortress both look more threatening in the beta than the final. The HUD went through many changes from the beta, the first being the counter, which went through 2 major ones. First, their positions were changed to the final game's placement, and then all their icons were revised to have a more realistic look. The power meter was also changed twice throughout development. The first meter looked nothing like the final, with an arrow pointing to the health instead of pie pieces in the final game. The second revision has a more similar design to the final health meter. It uses the same pie piece style, but with a different holder. If you look closely though, you can notice that the health in this meter decreases clockwise, instead of counterclockwise used in both the first and final versions. In the final game's Big Boo's Haunt World, 3 of the collectible stars are contained in Big Boo's, but not at first. Big Boo's in the beta contain keys, not stars. These keys would then be collected by Mario and added to a scrapped key counter, shown here. Perhaps these keys would have been used to take Mario to different parts of the mansion, which would have eventually led him to Big Boo's balcony. Some stages were dramatically changed. Peach's castle was one such area and went through changes both inside and out. It seems that there was originally no stained glass window of Peach on the front of the castle. The windows also sport a slightly different look to them, but overall not many changes were made to the outside. The inside though is a completely different story. In the beta, the entire room is textured with stars and moons on a blue wall. In fact, stars and moons were used a lot in the beta, as you can see by this painting slide. The stairs were replaced with 2 platforms to jump on, leading up to 1 door instead of 3. The top door also lacks the final door's lock. The door that leads to Jolly Roger Bay is in the same location as the final game, but has some differences. The door's star count originally required 4 stars instead of 3, and lacked the star texture surrounding the number. The Jolly Roger Bay painting in the room originally used the final Japanese version of the painting, which happens to lack the pirate ship in the North American and European versions. Also, the room that houses the painting is dramatically different from the final games, most likely meaning that the room's beta design was intended as a placeholder until the final version was completed. The inside of Peach's castle went through 2 more revisions before the final release. This version has a different texture for the walls that's closer to the final, but not exact. You should also notice that there is no toad in the doorway, and that the entrance is a single door with the star on it, rather than the double door in the final game. The last version of the castle before the final used the final's textures for the wall, as well as the double doors. But just like the last 2 revisions, there's no toad to greet you, and the stairs are still 2 platforms. One interesting thing to note is that in the Super Mario 64 instruction manual, it states that Princess Peach and the toads are missing. Could this mean that there were no toads planned to be in the castle? Other areas went through some changes as well, such as Dire Docks and, of course, Whomps Fortress. Some stages were even completely changed, like this winter stage, which eventually became Cool Mountain. Bowser's battle stage has a few elements that were revised in development. If you look closely when the key appears after defeating Bowser, you'll see tons of coins explode out of the key and then nothing. No coins fall to the ground. In this early footage of the beta, you can see coins on the ground left for Mario to collect. This was removed from the final game, but it appears they left the coin explosion anyway. In the final Japanese version of Super Mario 64, when Mario collects the key from Bowser while the player holds C up on the controller, the cutscene will show Mario with a power star instead of a key. What makes this interesting is that in the beta, Mario once collected a star from Bowser instead of a key. This glitch will not work with any other versions of Super Mario 64. Speaking of power stars, the beta stars were once 2D sprites with similar looks to the Super Mario RPG stars from the SNES. Various enemies also have some slightly different textures from the final release. The enemy that changed the most was Scuttle Bug. At first, this almost harmless creature sported a brown body as well as some very large angry eyebrows. I mean, what is he so angry about? Maybe it's because he's only been in 5 major games since 1996. Loser. Did I just say that out loud? Boo's early face texture was actually closer to the style used today than the texture used in the final game. And Pokey's in Dry Desert also had a different face. The Pokey's original face had an incredibly large smile, but you can't blame him. He's been in over 25 Mario games, unlike the Scuttle Bug. Pitiful. One of the most drastic differences between the beta and the final was that Mario originally had an entirely different voice early in development. A strange, high-pitched voice at that. Take a listen. Can you imagine what Mario games would be like today if Nintendo kept that voice? Shoulda. Some very interesting unused objects are inside of Super Mario 64, such as an unused enemy named Blarg. As you may or may not remember from other Mario games, Blarg is a lava dinosaur that pops out of pools of lava. This enemy first appeared in Super Mario World and was adapted to appear in Super Mario 64. However, it was most likely scrapped in the middle of its creation, due to its lack of textures and having only one animation. Blarg was intended to appear in the levels Lethal Lava Land, Bowser in the Fire Sea, and for some strange reason, wing Mario over the rainbow. Chili Bullies found in Snowman's Land actually have two different models. Large Chili Bullies, which are used in the final game, and small Chili Bullies, which go unused. Water mines are an unused obstacle intended for Super Mario 64's water levels, but they were never used. They look and act very similar to the bombs that appear in Bowser's battles. An unused model for a Yoshi egg is in the game's files, with a short bouncing animation. The egg is loaded into memory, but not placed in game, in Whomps Fortress and Wet Dry World. This could perhaps mean that Yoshi would have had a larger role in the game, instead of just, spoiler alert, being on top of Peach's castle. Though that probably wasn't as much of a spoiler as it would have been in 1996. The Boo key from the beta is still in the final game, and through clever hacking, is fully functional as well. Up to a point. See, the key can be placed inside a Boo, and after it's defeated be collected by Mario, but after he does this, the key isn't added to the key counter. In the Japanese version, the key counter looks exactly the same as in the beta. In contrast to the European version, where the key icon is replaced with this lovely symbol, and the North American version, in which it is completely removed. An unused trampoline has a model and two textures in the game's files, but wasn't completed and thus has no functionality. Once again, through the lovely world of hacking, this unused object can be brought to life and placed in game. In addition to the red, green, and blue switches, there was once a yellow switch with an accompanying transparent yellow box. When used in game, the switch is automatically set to the on position for some unknown reason. While we're on the topic of boxes, there's an early red box in the files for the wing cap stage. Depending on the angle you look at the box, the color changes. Two Koopa shells, one red and the other green, can be found in Super Mario 64's data. They both have blue bottoms and no behaviors or animations. Hackers have allowed Mario to use these shells as he would have in Mario Kart, but this was not their intended behavior. Now let's move on to unused textures, the most interesting of which is this metal wing for Mario's cap. This texture appears if Mario has both the wing cap and metal cap on at the same time, though this is impossible to do without the help of hacking. This cactus texture is found in the data for Shifting Sandland, and this texture resembling cracked ice was most likely intended for one of Super Mario 64's ice worlds. Some other various unused textures include a chain, some stairs, a rock, and a shaded circle. Some more interesting textures include early eyes for Mario and Bowser. The latter can be seen in early beta footage, where Bowser's eyes are blue instead of red. This face texture was likely intended to be used for Lakitu's Cloud, which has a face in every Mario game except for Super Mario 64. Moving off the topic of textures, this block of unused text was meant to be said right after the introduction to Big Boo's haunt, and likely spoken by a Boo. However, there is no point in this world where Mario must chase after a ghost, so this text block goes unused. In the images for Lethal Lava Lands, there's a single unused flower. Interestingly, this graphic is similar to the Power Flower in Super Mario 64 DS, in which it is used to replace Mario's cap. Now this similarity may just be a coincidence and this flower was simply meant to be for looks, but the fact that it's found in Lethal Lava Land seems to prove this theory wrong. So what could it have been meant for? We don't know, and probably never will. Anyone who's ever played Super Mario 64 knows of the many Luigi rumors, such as this one that was posted in 2000.
So all you have to do to play as Luigi is start a new game in Game B, get the first 2 stars in under 5 minutes, run 64 laps counterclockwise around the pool in the courtyard, swim to the settle, and lastly punch the star statue.
Yeah, right. Or what about this?
Plug the controller into the second port, hold the analog stick up, start Game B, press L, R, and start. Get the 1st, 3rd, and 7th star in Bomb-On Battlefield, Whomps Fortress, and Jolly Roger Bay. Collect the red coins in Bowser's Dark World. Get the 6th star in Cool Cool Mountain. Collect 8 red coins in the Wing Cap stage. go back to Bowser, collect 164 coins, beat Bowser, get to the Vanish Cap stage, go to Jolly Roger Bay, get the second star, push the poison box 64 times to the left and right, then ground pound on it. You'll see a green cap and Mario will say, Luigi time! At this point, go to the Hall of Mirrors, ground pound the first pole 6 times, and then ground pound the pole in front of the Goomba painting 4 times. Luigi will then appear in the mirror, and all you have to do is punch him. Easy, right? No matter how ridiculous these may seem nowadays, people were fooled and doomed to waste hours of their lives to these rumors. So why am I telling you this? Well, it's because Miyamoto stated in an interview that Luigi was actually planned to be in Super Mario 64 from the beginning. In fact, Super Mario 64 was meant to be a multiplayer game for a short time. In an early prototype, Mario and Luigi could enter Peach's castle at separate times and meet together in the corridor. In the final game, there's an option for the camera to be fixed, which is actually a remnant of a failed experiment where Mario and Luigi could walk away from each other and still remain visible on the screen. Very early in development, Mario and Luigi ran together on a flat field and everything worked great. That is until the development team started to create more complex landforms. Due to hardware limitations, it came down to using simple landforms or removing Luigi altogether. And in the end, Luigi was scrapped. So that's the beta of Super Mario 64. As you can see, this amazing Nintendo 64 game has a ton of scrapped ideas, most of which were added into later games. Yoshi got his prominent role in Super Mario Sunshine, Luigi became a multiplayer character in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and Blarg got his extra dimension in Super Mario Galaxy 2. But even with all the removed characters and ideas, Super Mario 64 is still one of my favorite video games of all time. If you want to see some more screenshots and videos of the beta and its unused objects, click the link in the description. So this has been Beta64 with the Super Mario 64 beta. Thanks for watching.
I've never before played a game with such a rich 3D environment where you can choose your view and have complete control over where you go. Forget your rock-hard beat-em-ups and rubber-burning races. Super Mario 64 is a launch game that doesn't take itself too seriously.